Well, it's official, Mo. We've made it to the end of season 1.
Wow. How did
I
that
know.
happen? This is absolutely amazing.
I love that straight off the bat, though, we've gone really grand and decided that as a new podcast, we're going to have seasons. Like we're some sort of indie startup on Netflix. I love that.
Well,
But
this is it. And are we going to start talking about our crew that are the early adopters who've been there from our day ones,
the
I
early
remember the early
adopters.
seasons.
Well, I feel like we need to we need like a name. Like Taylor Swift has got Swifties.
Yeah.
I feel like we need a name. I feel like we need a name for the people that have somehow ended up listening to our ramblings on the internet. I don't know what it's going to be. We're going to have to think about that.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about this episode because I think
Mm.
it was, for those of you that maybe haven't heard this story from either Mo or I, the reason we decided to have seasons was because what we were worried about when we first had this bonkers idea to create a podcast was that we didn't want to make a podcast that was rubbish and not have any idea or any point of reference to reflect and realize that it was rubbish. So what we wanted to do was kind of create a bit of a season where we knew what we were going to plan out for that season, and then have a point where we could reflect. We could think about everything that we'd thought about, learned, reflected on, the people that we'd had the good fortune of meeting and speaking to, and then come up with a plan of anything that we might want to tweak, or the people that we wanted to chat to in season 2. And what's really exciting is that list of people that we're going to chat to in season 2 is as long as my arm now.
Yes, we've had. There's been so many people that I've spoken to or connected with on LinkedIn or the other platforms, and I'm like, I've been sort of slightly taken aback. It's like, why are you asking to come and talk to us when you talk to us anyway? And oh yeah, because it's a podcast and because.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the emails and the invites to start rolling in, to sort of, Cannes Film Festival, the kind of big la-di-da to do stuff. Because now that we're influencers, that's what I've popped that on my LinkedIn. Influencer.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Social icon and
Well, that
influencer.
was, if you remember, that was actually one of the hopes what you said in the episode 1. I'm not
Yes,
there
it
yet to call
was.
myself an influencer. Do you think you are now, then, Jack?
I think we can both say that we are, man. I think we can say I've had some really lovely messages of people saying, we've listened to the podcast and we had this idea, or we do you remember, I can't remember what episode it was, but the school that I visited that had taken your idea around the thought tickle and turned it into
Oh,
something
yes.
to
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah. I
as a
think
bit of
that
an
was
after
episode
lunch.
5.
Yeah, what a
Mm.
beautiful thing. We have
Yeah.
effectively influenced.
Yes. Yeah. And when
Yeah.
I had that idea and when we started doing it, the furthest thing from my mind was actually that we were giving an educator a resource.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of which, shall we do our thought tickle today? Or shall we actually talk
Yes.
about what the podcast is about first?
Well, it's a funny podcast, this one, isn't it? Because it's really an opportunity for you and I to reflect on what's been a really exciting season. That we've
Mm.
been able to
Mm.
speak to some really wonderful people. And there's loads of different bits and pieces, isn't there, that we've talked about that we wanted to kind of think a bit more. Whether we're thinking about
Yeah.
all the wonderful folk we've met on this season, whether we're talking about the Ofsted framework that we know is sauntering around ready to greet
Yeah.
us. But yeah, let's start with the thought tickle. That's a good place to start.
Okay, right. So, Jack, I'm going to ask you this question. If you could download one new skill, Matrix style, what would you choose and why?
Should I start with the disclaimer that, and maybe an apology to listeners, that if they're expecting any kind of clever Matrix analogy or reference, they're not going to get it from me because I've never seen them. I'm familiar with the concept, but I have never seen the films. Have you?
Well, that sort of brings me to my thought tickles, actually. I might as well tell you what mine is now then, because
Go
you
on.
set me up there. Right. Mine would be the ability to instantly download and internalize the plot lines and character profiles of all of those films, and I do still use the word film, all of those films that people stop in their tracks whenever they hear that I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
And it's like I've committed some terrible atrocity. What do you mean? And it just completely derails conversations when I just say, "Oh, I've never seen it." And it's almost like there's a crime. And I'm going to give you a few examples of ones that really have a big effect. Dirty Dancing, never
Ooh.
seen it. Any Die Hard films, never seen them. Pulp Fiction, never seen them. Bridget Jones, not a clue. Not seen any of them. I've not seen Jackson. It has just gone. I know that this is
I'm
audio and there
shocked.
won't be many video clips, but Jack's face has just absolutely given me a look of disgust. What
I'm
was that
shocked.
about there?
I was completely on board with you until you said you'd not seen any of the Bridget Jones films. I mean, what are we teaching people in schools if not the importance of the Bridget Jones series of films? We have failed. We have failed as
The
educators.
thing is, what happens is I miss the boat. If I don't get in, and the same with television series as well. So there are so many. Breaking Bad, never seen it. Not seen a single episode. What's that other one? The other one that everyone keeps Killing Eve, no clue.
Oh no, me.
So and the thing is with me, if I don't get in on the ground floor, I've missed it. I'm never going back. I'm never going. It's never coming. I never. Sopranos, another one. Never seen them, and
Mm,
so I never get to actually join the merry-go-round if I'm not there at the beginning. But the response that gets in some people just really appalled, like you, Jack, just then with Bridget Jones. And it's just that, right, the conversation was flowing. The conversation wasn't about films. You just made some popular reference to something. Ironically, Matrix, never seen it. But, I'm like, how is it that me not seeing it has completely derailed this really interesting conversation? And now we're all
mm.
staring at Mo, wondering whether or not she's got a telly.
See, but I think it's worse now, isn't it? Almost because 10, 15 years ago, if you didn't have it on DVD or you didn't have it on Blu-ray, for those of us old enough to remember Blu-ray, or
Listen,
even older,
my conversation is VHS or Betamax, so go on.
I never quite got Betamax, but I do remember VHS. I'm traumatized by a sex ed lesson where a VHS tape was paused. That's a story for another episode.
It really is.
But if you didn't have the DVD or the VHS or the Blu-ray, then that's why you haven't seen it. Because maybe you didn't go
Mm,
to cinema. I never went to
yeah,
cinema as a
yeah,
kid. But now, because everything's so streamable and so easy, the kind of expectation is, especially after COVID, the
mm,
expectation is almost that you've just watched everything because that's all there was
yes,
to do.
yes,
But I think
yes.
people do forget that for those of us in education and other really, really vital roles, we maybe weren't sat at home watching
No,
Netflix from start
no.
to finish. I'm with you on that because it would have prevented my shock and horror. I'm very sorry, mate. There's an opportunity for you here though to get back on board with Bridget Jones because isn't there a new one that's just come out and that'll
I
be out on
saw a clip of
DVD
some woman
soon.
up a tree. I think I saw a clip of some woman up a tree that had something to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if
so
that
I
was the
reckon
latest one or whatever.
it is. Yeah, it's the fourth one. I've read the book.
Mm.
I sobbed at the book, so Lord knows what I'll be like at the film. I keep wanting to say DVD. I don't think you can buy DVDs anymore. But yeah, maybe what you could do in preparation to watch the fourth one is go back and watch one, two, and three.
Yeah.
Well, when I see it, I'll tell you all about it.
See, that's the other thing that happens. People start telling me the entire plot lines of it. I'm like,
Yeah,
you've lost me. You've lost me.
and we definitely not got to watch it now because spoiler alert. Oh goodness, that's a good one, Mo. I like that. I kind of think I would also want to download that skill.
Mm,
I think mine's a bit niche.
okay.
So, for people that don't know, I'm a celiac. So, I can't eat gluten and wheat. And I love it when you tell people that you've got an allergy or you've got some kind of, medical condition whereby you
Mm,
can't eat certain things. Because their instant reaction is, what, not even just a little bit? And you go, I don't think you understand the concept of allergies. That's like asking somebody who carries around an EpiPen because they're allergic to peanuts if they could just have half of them.
yes.
The
Yeah.
answer is no.
That's that. Did you ever used to? Well, I'm really conscious of saying, have you ever seen this or have you seen that now? Royal Family. Anthony's girlfriend says she's a vegetarian, and the nana says, "Well, can you have wafer thin ham? If I cut it thin enough, it stops being the carcass of a dead animal."
Oh, I love it. I think my Matrix style downloadable skill would probably be the ability to just um, eat wheat and gluten, to not be a celiac, purely for convenience. Because one of the
Yes,
things, I'm going to start ranting now, I can feel it. One of the things that really drives me nuts when you're trying to eat, because we travel a lot for work, so I spend a lot of
yes.
time in hotels and restaurants trying to eat. It becomes really hard work. I mean, not only is it very
Mm,
expensive, I think if I could
mm,
buy, regular bread, regular pasta, all the bits and pieces, I'd be so much richer.
yes.
it's so expensive, but it's the hard work of it. You feel like you're being difficult because you know
Mm,
you can't eat it because you'll be phenomenally unwell, and the risk it
mm,
carries is
mm,
really high.
mm.
Oh, they give you, everyone else gets a nice little menu, this really beautifully decorated thing, and they come out to you
Yeah.
with some kind of lever arch file of risk assessment and a bit of paper that says, could you just sign your name to agree that if
Can you
you are
absolve us
unwell.
from killing you?
Yeah, it's just, and then you read in this kind of risk assessment and you go, oh God, I just wanted dinner. And
Mm.
I do think when, now and again, if me and my lovely husband ever go on holiday and he's eating some sort of fabulous pizza and I'm thinking, I think the right thing for you to have done would have been to order something as sad as what I'm eating so we can just be sad together rather than him enjoying his holiday and enjoying the, local delicacies that are available.
Come down and share my misery.
Yeah, I keep seeing these videos of people on Instagram that say their love language is that one of them can't eat a certain thing because of an allergy. The other
Yes.
person eats the same so they can get like half and half and share. And then I look at my husband and think, I've got no chance. He looks at my food sometimes and I say, oh, what do you think? And he goes, it's very gluten free.
What a
So,
loaded comment.
yeah, I think I'll be eating gluten free on my own.
Bless you. No, that would be. I mean, my daughter has significant allergies and she has an EpiPen and stuff like that. And you do end up feeling like you're being
Mm.
just difficult.
Yeah, you feel responsible for everybody else and
Yes.
their ability to enjoy their meal.
Yes. Yes. And her allergies are, one of them is fairly unusual, which is citrus, but the other one is extremely unusual, which is grapes.
Right.
And
That is quite unusual.
it's grapes that send her into anaphylaxis. You know,
Wow.
the citrus just makes her very itchy and she has to take a lot of antihistamines, but the grapes is what gives her the anaphylaxis. But she only discovered she had it when she was 21.
Yeah, see, I didn't get a diagnosis till I was about 23.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
But
funny, isn't it?
she was eating grapes and doing, and she hadn't had any for a while, and then thought, oh, I fancy some grapes. And then the next minute, I'm getting a call because she was at university at the time. I don't want to worry you, but I'm in an ambulance.
Because nobody worries at that sentence, do they?
No. All right, okay. I just put the phone down and carried on. But it's just that thing of having to say to people, because it just sounds silly. I'm
Mm.
allergic to grape, but what do you mean? No one's allergic to grape. Yeah, I am. Yes, she
Yeah.
is, I should say. So I do recognise for you it must be, because it must be so universal as well, things with gluten in, because
Oh, it's in
it's
everything.
gluten. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the silly little things that you have to check. Like there are some, for anybody that knows me well, they'll know that the way to my heart is with a bag of sweets. I'm quite a cheap date in that respect, bag of sweets. But there are sweets, with wheat and flour in. They used to. They do it a little bit less nowadays. But they used to coat, like if you bought a bag of frozen chips, they'd coat them in flour so they didn't
They
stick together.
did.
Stuff like
Yes.
that, that you'd think, but there
Yes.
is no need for wheat and gluten to be in this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a funny old life. You should
Oh
see my
dear.
face. There's a couple of shops now that have just started buying gluten-free sandwiches to be part of a meal deal. And
Mm.
honestly, it's like somebody's given me, a block of gold. The sheer excitement of being able to have a meal deal is just wild. And I realise how tragic that sentence just sounded.
Well, the thing is, I'm calling me tragic then because I'm thinking, God, that must be wonderful to actually have that experience of first appreciating a meal deal.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'm living the dream.
Oh dear, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. Oh, season one.
Yeah.
What for you? Let's have. I'm just interested. What surprised you about this stuff that we have done? And the thing is, I'm really aware that we're going to start be really sounding quite self-indulgent here, and we need to avoid doing that. But what was it that surprised you about taking this on and the things that we found out?
I mean, I think the first surprise, and I mean this, I think the first surprise is that people have listened to it and really enjoyed it. And I know that sounds really silly, but I think when we set out to kind of create this, we both talked about how, do you know what? If nothing else, we'll have a whale of a time creating this.
Yeah,
And we
yeah,
have had such a good time. We've met some incredible
absolutely.
people, talked about some incredible things. We've learned a lot, and I think that's really incredible. But we've had so many messages, and we watched our viewer stats sort of go up and up and up. And it's really exciting that people are
Mm.
finding use in this silly idea that we had. So that definitely surprised me. I thought I was going to be the person thinking, ah, 3 people have listened to it today. And then I speak to my mum and she goes, I've listened to the podcast 3 times today. And I go, oh, that's not quite the same.
Do you know, that's it. I think that it's that idea of that there is actually a market for it, because podcasts are so common now,
Oh,
increasingly,
there's so
and
many.
you know, there are so many of them, and for people to be finding us, and people from some fairly obscure places, you know, when you look at
Yeah.
what the data says about where people are coming listening to us from, we've literally got people all over the world listening to our rambling nonsense, you know, and I think that
Yeah.
it's that's the thing that amazes me, is where people are listening to us from. But
Yeah.
also in terms of the content, the surprising thing for me is you never really sit back and realize and appreciate the breadth or depth of your own knowledge, do you?
Mm.
And the because I approach my job from the culture of curiosity. I get the pleasure from learning stuff,
Yeah.
and actually an opportunity to sit back and actually have evidence of what I've learned.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Because I think that's part of what we wanted when we talked about this idea of creating or supporting this idea
Mm,
of developing a culture of curiosity was, I remember when we started talking about it, I shared with you that I'd always been brought up with this idea that the moment you decide or you tell yourself that there's nothing left to learn, that you are the smartest, the cleverest person in the
mm,
room, is often the moment you become the most dangerous. And one of
yes.
the things we have to be mindful of is that, I mean, if you think about some of the training we went on 10 years ago, at the
Mm,
time it
mm,
was really useful, really helpful. But now
yes.
you'd look back and go, God, why did we think
Yes.
that? I mean, it was
Yes.
only what? It was 20-ish years ago that we stopped telling people to straddle individuals having a seizure and pop a tongue depressor in. So it's that thing where we've got to be mindful that this idea of this continuing learning, this being curious about what else there is to learn, to talk about, to
Mm,
hear, to share other people's perspectives, to
mm,
make sure the kind of circle of perspectives that we hear from isn't dominated by a particular group or a particular life experience, or that
yes.
there's opportunity to reflect and to think and to
Yes.
wonder.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that I've listened and I remember guests and I remember each week and I remember people have said things and I remember being aware in the moment as we were recording. I suddenly have this sort of stepping out of myself and being aware, this is a really interesting conversation. I'm learning so much.
Ah,
I'm fascinated. I mean, and when we started, I sort of thought, well, am I going to be so concerned about the technicalities and how does this sound? And will I be able to actually have enjoy the conversation in the moment? And I have been able to. You
yeah,
know, there's been one or two occasions where I've sort of had to step out myself and thought, oh, we're going to need to remember to edit that, or we're going to remember. But by and large, no, you're just having a great conversation.
yeah. And we've been really lucky, haven't we, in this what is quite a short season compared to how long season
Yeah,
two might end up being.
yeah.
We got to chat to
Well, of course,
Dan
that means there's
Tresman.
season three, actually. You know that means there's season three.
Oh yeah. At this point we're plotting brand deals. Mo, we are plotting brand deals. Purely so, if we can find out a way to fairly and appropriately make some degree of money from this podcast for one benefit, right? So we can pay somebody else to edit the bloody things.
Oh my God, yes. My God, yes.
It is just, it is a labor of love, but
Yes.
it's a labor.
Mm.
It's one of those things. It's like for anybody listening who's old enough to remember when you had an actual answering machine with buttons on, you didn't just unlock your phone and press transcribe. Although that's quite funny. I got a voicemail a few days ago and watching the transcription and then listening to the message, they were two wildly different things. Very, very, very different. But you'd rewind, you'd actually have to press play and just imagine
Mm.
listening to the same message on your answering machine about 100 times to try and get the edit right. That's what it feels like
Oh yeah.
sometimes.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, if we could find out some way to, some company that wants to stick an advert for 30 seconds in the middle just so I can pay someone else to edit, that would be a dream come true,
Oh my
really.
God, yes. Now
It
you
would
got me
be up
thinking,
there
yeah.
with gluten-free meal deals. That would be big.
Wow, high praise indeed.
Oh yeah. But we've had some incredible guests, haven't we? We got to speak to Dan Tresman, who's the CEO
Mm.
of Light Years Education. We got to speak to the lovely, our good friend Paul Bray. We got to speak to your lovely friend, the light of my
Meg.
life now, lovely Meg Hughes. We got to speak to Janelle, and it was incredible. Again, we'd spoken lots of education capacities, but Janelle comes from the care industry and that sort of supported living. And
Yes.
again, that was such a great way to have a think about a different lens, a different kind of view and
Just a
perspective.
different context, wasn't it? And I think maybe that's something that in future seasons we may
Mm,
end up doing more of, because it's that you learn about the impact of what goes on in schools really well by stepping out of the school context and seeing what the
yeah,
effects of the practices that we have are on people's lives. Because actually, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? Getting people ready for the rest of their lives. So the
yeah.
idea of stepping out of that school environment and actually seeing, well, what was the impact of education on where you are now and what this situation is now?
There's a really interesting point of intersectionality there, though, isn't there? I mean, I do some work with quite a large national organisation, and they're a really wonderful organisation. They have both education provision and they have residential
Mm,
care. And one of the things that bothered me a little bit right at the start, and I've worked with them for a few years now, was that even though they were part of the same organisation, those providers didn't speak to each other. I mean, so much so
mm,
that I did a
mm,
visit to one of their schools, and their residential care facility was on site. But
mm.
there was no conversation between the two as to how do we support little Jack
Wow.
here? How do we support little
Yeah.
Jack after school?
Yeah.
How do we
Yeah.
offer some consistency, dependability? What have we learned in school? What have we learned at home? And so that kind of intersectional point of how those experiences collide almost was a really interesting episode.
Mm, mm.
Janelle was great.
Yes. Yes.
So what what I don't know if I maybe asked you this, but what surprised you? What kind of bits have stuck out for you in season
I found Dan's episode really, really useful, really
one?
insightful, because the whole concept of it was the dream
Yeah.
that I didn't realize I had, of actually having a blank piece of paper when it comes to what are we going to create for these young people? What are we going to create for these children? How are we going to use all of our knowledge, all of our experiences, all our understanding, all of our learning, and actually make something out of this nothing that we have here?
Mm,
And it was fascinating to hear that. And actually, when you get to apply your thinking and your ideas on inclusion and most importantly belonging from the ground up, it's actually really simple stuff.
yeah.
And there's little things, it's not huge things. And yet, if you wait until you're in a building that's been operating as a school for 150 years, it's actually a really difficult and impossible thing to do, which is move
Mm,
the door from one place to the other.
yeah.
That was the one I think that really it surprised me how energized I was by the idea of a blank slate.
Yeah, I remember at the end of the episode you said, you've made me want to go back. I don't think I will, but you've made me want to go back.
I've actually found there's a couple of them I've said that on. I think I said that on see episode 5 as well.
Yeah.
I wish I was going back now that I've learned about nurture and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a surprise actually. To be fair, that's again a surprise, that how many times wanting to go back. And Meg had me wanting to be trained to be a psychotherapist as well.
Yes. Do you know, it part of the conversation we had with Meg, I'd been toying around with going back to uni.
Mm,
And part of the conversation that we had with Meg really pushed me to get my application in.
mm,
It was such an interesting conversation, and I think it was interesting for me. I'm not very good at not making it obvious when I work with people that part of the big why or the big driver for me and what I do is I've kind of sat on both sides of the fence. I've lived it and
yeah,
worked it, but I kind of
yes,
endured it as a child and a young person
yes.
too. So the episode where we talked to Meg a lot about the kind of weight and influence of shame and shame-based systems and the way in which shame manifests in some education experiences was a really heavy one for me. It took me quite a
Mm,
bit of time to think through
mm,
and process because I was very mindful of my sort of professional hat and the experiences that I'd offered.
yeah.
And then the weight of the experiences that I was still carrying, years and years and years later. So
Mm.
it was such an interesting episode.
Very, very powerful one. Very, very
Mm.
powerful one.
Yeah.
And so that, yeah, it's hard to actually pick out specific moments and specific incidences. But it was when Meg, for me, in that episode, just really simply stated guilt is when you're doing something wrongly, and shame is when you
Mm,
feel wrong. And it was just such one powerful sentence.
yeah.
That's now become my description. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
obviously, I'm going to credit her for doing it. I'm crediting it for doing it right now. But yeah, it's like that. You've just found the ability in one sentence to sum up something I've been scrambling around with for
Yeah.
years to articulate.
And that's what's so exciting about this is what I've loved about this podcast. And it was everything. I remember when we sat in that weird hotel in Stockport having a coffee, talking about this ridiculous idea to create a podcast. But that's exactly what we both wanted. What we wanted
Yes.
was to be able to offer an opportunity to just keep chatting, to just wonder, to just be curious, and to hopefully, help people do the same along the way. And
Mm.
I really think, at risk of blowing our own trumpet, I feel like we've done that.
Jack, this entire episode is clearly us blowing our own
It really
trumpet.
is, isn't it? Well done, us.
We're fantastic.
Best podcast ever.
No, it has. Go on.
Sorry, I'm mindful. We're talking about all of our sort of best bits. Oh God, we're like the Kylie album 10 years later, aren't we? We're like the best hits album. I'm mindful there maybe are a couple of things that we've maybe put off talking about. Is this the episode to do it? Is this?
Do you know we have kicked this one into the long grass?
We have, haven't
Every
we?
single time we have mentioned,
Quite a
dare I say it, the
ferocious
big
kick.
O.
Not the big O. I'm going to have to edit it out again, aren't I?
You are.
Or do we just tell the listener? Do we just
Just
avoid
say
all?
it. Just say it. Just say it.
We'll allow people to Google appropriately and perhaps not on work devices. But, there was an episode where we talked, I think it was the episode with Dan, wasn't it? We talked about Ofsted quite a bit. And I feel like sometimes, I've recently supported an inspection, and the team that we had from Ofsted were absolutely wonderful.
Mm.
They were great and wonderful with our children. They were really courteous to the needs of our young people and the needs of staff. They sent over videos and photos to introduce themselves. They asked us
Mm.
about dress code because they were mindful that some of our children hadn't been in school for periods of time. They had quite negative school experiences. And what they didn't want to do was rock up in fancy suits and wobble. And I thought
That
that,
that in itself is a massive shift from my experiences. We'll come
yeah.
back to that.
So I don't want to brandish Ofsted with one
Mm.
great big brush, but we know
Mm.
there's work to do. Sometimes saying Ofsted is a bit like saying Voldemort. It's just the word you shouldn't say. So
Not seen any Harry Potter films.
me either. Me being, very literal. And again, it's my ADHD. If it's not in my brain, it's not there.
Mm.
So I would say the big O. And it was Mo that reminded me that the big O has also been used to refer to other things. For listeners, Google at your own peril,
Do your own research.
perhaps not on a work device. Okay. Are we going to have to put like an 18 plus warning on this episode?
But it was so funny because you just kept saying the big O. And I just had to say, are you sure you want to use that? And you were like, what? What do you mean? And I literally had to spell it out what that was.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a rough day for Jack. An even rougher week trying to edit it. So shall we talk about Ofsted, and should we have a quick chat about we know that there are sort of framework adjustments coming, although I think they've been kicked into some long grass like we
Yeah,
have we have as well. But
yeah.
I think should we maybe start with the end of sort of single word judgments? And we'll be careful about how we talk about this because we know that unfortunately some of these considerations around the impact of the Ofsted experience came around from a really really tragic event, and
Horrific.
it's really awful. I think that was the catalyst
It was,
for
yes, basically it was almost as it was, had to have a horrible end game before
yeah.
people started actually considering how could it be?
Yeah, and that's really tough. And I think it's one of those kind of situations where what we've all been hoping for in the light of such a horrific incident and such a horrific event is that these shifts, these changes would be meaningful, and that what we didn't
Yes.
get was a sort of repackage of the same
Fudging
same
around the
thing.
edges, yes.
Yeah, a sort of shift in the wrapping paper, but what
Mm,
was in the box was still the
mm.
same. I think that the end of single word judgments as a concept is a fine one. I think that the individuals who it's always been a thing, hasn't it? That the minute you got a good or an outstanding, you would print it on every piece of material you could. You'd have it in written in the sky.
If nothing else, as soon as I realised that there would no longer be those plastic banners on the gates and on the fences of schools as you drive past that torturously pick out quotes, they've clearly just picked out 3 or 4 words from a much bigger sentence that perhaps wasn't as positive as they wanted it to be. And it's dot dot dot, a good place to be, dot dot dot, and then what was on the other side of those dots. So the fact that that will actually signal the end of those plastic banners. But you're
Yeah.
right, the headings, everything. Yeah.
I think what will be interesting now with this kind of suggested report card structure will be how different that becomes. If we're thinking about individual scores, how different that becomes from
Mm,
a single word judgment. I don't know.
mm,
I think what's hard to any inspection is that it is a snapshot in time, isn't it? I think
yes.
what was always tough. I mean, one of the first inspections I was sort of part of, we'd done a huge amount of work in this SEM provision, and one of the things that we found really hard during a lot of our sort of meetings with inspectors was they were really great and polite with us, and we talked to them about the journey that we were on and where we were
Mm,
going
mm,
and where we were
mm,
at in this implementation plan. And what they had
mm,
to keep bringing us back to was, but we've got to look at where you are now, what
yes.
we can see today, not what we would see in 6 weeks' time when you're at the end of
Mm,
that, implementation of a new phonics scheme,
mm,
but where you are now. And
mm,
that's hard.
yes.
So there will always be frustration around what that report could have been in lots of ways. But I do
Mm,
think the end of that one word judgment will help that.
yes. Yes, yes. And I think we moved beyond it, but there was a horrible period of time in Ofsted's history where, and it was also coincidentally correlated with the rise of the superhead, where that one charismatic person, often in a really, really shiny suit and stinking of aftershave, but that's not me. All of the manifestations were there as well. And they'd have a narrative and they'd do a performance and they'd out this performance for inspectors and actually in the drive to, and quite rightly, move away from constantly being in classrooms and the pressure being on teachers and the observation and the grilling and so, but it went too far the
Mm,
other way, and then you were just getting these superheads who were able to weave this narrative about their school that simply didn't exist
mm,
on the ground. It could exist for the 1 or 2 days of inspection, but every day the diet that was being fed the children and staff on a daily basis was completely different.
yeah.
And I think that that's going to be a much harder thing for people to do
Mm,
with these report cards. And it was dying out, so I'm not going to say that that was the current thing, but I think that it's a real. We've never in education shied away from scrutiny. We've never shied away from that, and that's never
no.
actually. I've never heard anyone say there shouldn't be any. But
No,
what
I
people
think we
want
almost do the
to,
opposite. We welcome
yes,
it almost. We
yes,
bring it in
yes.
ourselves.
Absolutely. But what I've always heard people say is we want what they do to be respectful and contextualized for our reality. And no single word judgment was ever going to do that. The report card has a better chance of doing that. But I do wonder about how much risk there is, or no, how much does the report card address the thing that I find the hardest? And I think that and all of us who work in inclusion and SEN and belonging have really come to this conclusion is there is that particular mindset that can exist where if it doesn't matter to Ofsted, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, you're right.
And
You're
and
absolutely right.
that was able to thrive in the single word judgment because the
Yes.
list of things that made up that judgment were very small. And if it wasn't on that list, no amount of good intention or head nodding or you knew when you were talking to some people that they were not going to take on a single thing you were going to say because Ofsted would never ask them about it.
No. So it wouldn't appear in their school
Yes.
development plan or their
Yeah.
SEF or
Yeah. Yeah. Well, or most importantly, wouldn't appear in the corridors for inspections.
yeah. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, I hope that the inspection that I was most recently party to, I found to be a really positive experience. I mean, it was rigorous, don't get me wrong. It was,
Yeah, yeah.
no stone unturned, as we would welcome. But it was beautifully bespoke to our provision and to the needs of our children.
I love the fact, and I've never heard that before. Sorry to interrupt you, but I've never heard the fact that they were sending videos beforehand, and they were so that's fundamental understanding about
Yeah.
the principles of people who are neurodiverse, who may have trauma or those other things, and actually how that
Mm.
impacts on their reality on the ground.
Yeah.
I
And
need to know who's coming through the door.
it was one of the points that we've made through this podcast quite a lot is that a lot of what we're talking about are quite small adjustments, but the
Yes,
impact is huge. I mean, the
yes,
inspection started at 10:30. And that suggestion was made by the lead inspector. So all of our children could come in, settle, have taken part in their usual start of day routine, had an assembly to be reminded of who was
yes,
joining us later in the
yes,
morning,
yeah.
and remind them of the photos, which I thought was beautiful,
That's
absolutely
incredible.
beautiful. The fact that the inspection team were curious about how best to dress so that they wouldn't have any negative impact or influence on the children
Mm,
in their day to day. There was
mm.
a wobbly moment, quite a low level wobbly moment, and one of the staff felt the need, as we've had before, to say, "Oh, I'm really sorry about that." And the lead inspector said, "Don't you dare apologise. Go look after that little person, and you let me know when you're ready to carry on."
Oh,
And I thought,
wonderful.
if this is a reflection of the if the changes that have been made at Ofsted, the individualised training and support around how they support staff and leaders through the inspection process,
Mm.
but how they support the process as a whole, I thought, what an incredible reflection.
This may, sorry, go on.
I got to have a really lovely moment in my capacity during that inspection to thank the inspection team, to thank them
Brilliant.
for the care and the consideration that they'd given to the staff and to my
Mm.
children. I was really, really happy.
Whereas previously, when we've had to thank inspectors when they're being there, it's through gritted teeth. Thank you.
Or as they leave.
It's a leave.
Yeah.
That just contrasts with something, and I suspect we might have to have a think about whether we want this bit in, Jack. But you were saying there about the wobble. I had an inspection many moons ago. In fact, it was my first inspection as a head, and it was when you had 3 or 4 days notice. It wasn't
Mm.
no, it wasn't. It was when you had 6 weeks notice. So it
Right.
was that long ago. And you're just looking baffled now. I thought there'd been
Oh,
6 weeks
what?
notice of inspection. My first inspection as an NQT, I started in September and I was told we're getting inspected 3 weeks after Easter.
Wow.
But that's outside. Anyway, yeah, it was 6 weeks notice. And so you get a chance, you prepare and all these sorts of things. And I'd prepared these profiles of these children, and it was an SEMH setting. Stage 3 it was. And I'd done this list of if this child is doing this, or if you see this, please, this is what it is, and what, blah, blah. And there was one little dot that I put, please do not stand behind this young person. And you don't need to know anymore, just don't do it. And I'd given this to the inspector in advance, and they turned up and blah, 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 and walked into the classroom where this same, and I'd actually attached a photograph because I thought you need to see
Yeah.
this person, don't stand behind them.
Mm.
Went right up where they were sitting. So they were sitting, and this is an adult standing behind them, leaned over their shoulder and said, "And what are you doing?" Looking at the work. And this young person reared up and back and headbutted right between the eyes this
Oof.
person who was looming over them.
Yeah.
And some very choice words. Who's that? Who's he think he is? Sort of thing. And I ushered him out the way, and I sort of patched up the inspector as they felt, And they turned round and said, "Well, you don't need to worry. I don't think I'm going to mark that negatively."
Wow.
My response was, if you mark that negatively, you're the wrong person to be here.
Well, the only place to mark that negatively is in some sort of individual reflection about one's own performance
Yes.
in their context as an inspector.
Now, I don't know whether we'll be able to keep that one in or what you think, but just the contrast
Yeah.
between your
It's
story about how they were tripping over themselves.
no, I think you're right. I think we should keep it. I think
Mm.
And we know that there are lots of wonderful people. I know lots of incredible, beautiful, beautiful souls that work at Ofsted, in lots of reasons for the same reason we do what we do, because we want to be
Yes,
part of the
yes,
change. We want
yes,
to we want to
yes,
influence that.
absolutely.
But I
This was
think,
two. This was very, very. This is over 20 years ago.
yeah, but I think we've seen some progression. But I was chair of governors for a school, which meant my inspection capacity was a little bit different. And we had one of the national leaders for SEN inspections, who was our HMI, and one
Mm,
of our little men had Down syndrome,
mm,
and he was just such an inquisitive little man. He just wanted to connect. He just wanted to
mm.
know. And this was, I believe, they still wear them. The little ID badges where they've got the hologram of the crown on. So little man approached the HMI, pointed at his badge, pointing at the crown, and said, "You work for the Queen." He was just inquisitive, and the inspector sort of shuddered back and sort of shuddered in sort of fear and awkwardness. And I thought, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I ushered him outside and I said, "I mean this with the greatest respect in the world. But if you continue to shudder at my children and make them feel uncomfortable in their own school, we're going to have a real problem." I said, "This
Good
is
for
this
you.
is their school. You
Good for
are
you.
you are a visitor in their classroom. Your job is to see what's going on and not to disturb them. You're
Mm,
lucky that I don't believe he picked up on your shudder, but I did." But it really bothered me. The
yeah.
head teacher of this school is looking at me going, "Oh God, he's arguing with the HMI. It's day."
How was that received? I'm interested. How was that received by the HMI?
He was a little bit frosty at the time, but at the
Yes.
end of final feedback, he came up to me and shook my hand and said, "Thank you for having the children's back. I'm sorry
Mm,
I shouldn't have behaved that way, and I'm
yes.
glad that you were there to call me out for it, and the way that you called
Wow.
me out was appropriate."
Brilliant. Good for him. Good for him.
And I thought that was a big moment, you know. I
Absolutely.
went home that evening going, "Oh God, I've just ruined the inspection. But that's it. We're going to be thrown into our eye because I couldn't keep my mouth shut." And then I thought, I'm going to start writing an appeal letter just in case. But to be fair to him, he was great. I thought it was completely out of order.
Mm,
I had a real issue with the idea. Now I'm really confident that that little man was oblivious to it.
yes. Yes.
Because I kind of intervened and said, "You're absolutely right. He does work for the Queen. Can you see that crown?" But if he'd have picked up on that, I know enough about that little man to know that he would have found that quite confusing. He would have wondered
Mm,
why there was a concern. Why was he behaving like that towards him? That he
yes.
didn't mean him any
Yes.
harm.
No.
And if that had happened, the only person responsible for that, with the knowledge that this was a national leader of SEN inspections in an SEN school with,
Mm,
with quite complex needs, quite a variety of complex needs,
mm, mm.
yeah, maybe I should have wound my
It's
neck
lesson
in.
it's lesson one, isn't it, when you're working with young people with special needs? Well, it's lesson one when you're working with any young person, but particularly when you're claiming to be an SEN specialist, is rule number one is your face needs to have the ability to. You cannot react how your heart might be feeling at any one moment in time if it's not the
No.
right thing to do.
Yeah, I think a lot. It's such a silly analogy, but it sticks with me. So I grew up on the Isle of Wight, which meant there's lots
Mm,
of, time on the beach and lots of time walking through countryside. And the thing we were always told is that when you interact with the countryside or the beach or, the outdoors, that there should be no trace that you were ever there. And I
mm,
think the same applies to inspections. But
mm.
when we think about the children who are just having another day at school, but with this, sudden team of people lording in and
Yes.
around them,
Yeah.
I think there should be no trace for the children or the young people
Mm,
within that provision, that the
mm.
inspection shouldn't influence their experience enough to the point where it has a detrimental impact on their day.
No, no. I mean, I get it. And just from when I'm doing consultancy work and I go into and if I go in to a room, I mean, I never turn up unannounced. People know I'm coming. But if I go into a room and I see the printed out lesson observation in a plastic wallet at the back, at clearly where there's a chair for me, my heart
Uh,
sinks because I'm like, you don't have to do that. I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to. You've clearly had the kids sit up, metaphorically, because I'm
yeah,
coming in the room, and that's not I've been asked to come in and help. I need to see the reality. And that's the
yeah,
thing I think for me is the hopefulness about what I'm hearing about inspections now and what this new framework gives us now is that make it more and more explicit that if I want to get out of this inspection what I need to get out of this inspection, I've got to put down the act. It's not a performance. They need the reality.
And hopefully, I think one of the big calls has been that the inspection framework, because I mean, what is tricky? We know that it's been kicked into the sort of latter part of this year,
Mm.
so maybe we'll kick it into the long grass again and try again at Christmas.
When we actually get the final version, because we haven't actually,
No, it's a bit
not
too
there.
soon. We're all speculating, aren't we? But I think what we're hopeful for is that perhaps, when there is a system whereby it's comfortable to be, to know that there will be wobbly moments, that there will be weird and wonderful things that happen in any normal day, as we know that they do, that
Mm.
that reality can be taken in and processed by inspectors who are curious about the experience
Mm.
and have the
Mm.
consideration of their own. That means the inspection is also about a way forward rather than that snapshot, this is it, done deal for the next 4 years, about what are
Mm.
the ways forward. If there are areas that we think we could develop and improve, what might that look like? And where might those, resources and national support look like? And
I'm increasingly beginning to accept that it might have been a fever dream that I had. But way back when, at the start of my teaching career, I am convinced, and I've not actually found any proof of this. So if there is a listener who can remember this and it validates me, I'd really appreciate it. I'm pretty sure that Ofsted used to be called the Inspection and Advisory Service. I am convinced, but I can't find anybody to validate this, and I think it must have been just but it was just something that an inspector had told me early in the early days to
okay,
say, we're there to offer advice. It
well,
might be
there's
that, it might be that, but what a difference it would have made if that had been the full
yeah,
title all
yeah.
along.
And it comes back to maybe what we should try to do. Maybe let's go and what's his name? The new chief HMI,
No
Martin
idea.
something.
My answer, I'm rubbish with names, which is why whenever anyone says what's his name, my answer is always Bob Carrollgees. So
I'm sure I'm Googling as we
yeah,
speak. Martin Oliver.
oh yeah, him, yeah.
So maybe what we should do is he does keep appearing at different events. Maybe we should stalk him and try and get him onto the podcast.
Yeah. In
Because I'd
fact,
love
an inspector would be a great person to have on the podcast.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about this idea of it's that culture of curiosity again, isn't it, that
Mm,
offers us a way forward because we
yeah,
wait, we watch, we wonder.
yeah,
But I think the phrase, I think Dan used this in his episode. I'm with him. I think until we see it and when we reflect on how this might be adopted, I think we can be cautiously optimistic. I think
yeah.
there are points of positivity that we hope will continue. There are some areas that we think maybe a bit
Mm,
more thought required, but
mm,
hopefully we're stepping in the right direction and hopefully lessons have been learned and the support for staff, as well as children, but support for
yes,
staff and
yeah.
leaders through that process is
Mm,
significantly different and significantly better.
absolutely. And that's the cautious optimism is exactly the word, but there's also that slight fear that we've learned to have as specialists because we have seen many things in draft form that when
Mm.
the reality comes to it, the dilution
Yes.
that has taken place has actually removed the essence of what excited us. And I really hope that doesn't happen. I know
Yeah.
that there is a conversation that's very much fresher and needs to be kicked even further into the long grass about the changes to the EHCP process, if that's even going to continue to be what
Mm.
it is, that worry me significantly more at this moment in time. And perhaps I think that might be and again, we don't know, maybe that they knew that those were coming and that's why the Ofsted inspection, the framework, has been kicked further back. I don't know.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see. I've just had a sudden panic moment. We'll edit this bit out.
Yeah.
Does my sound okay? Because it's recording off my AirPods, not off the microphone.
Sounds fine to me.
I've no idea why.
But
I'll
we've
leave
always
it so
got
there's
that.
no.
You've always got no. Leave it so it's the same, and we've always got that thing of adjusting audio, isn't there? There's the.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
worry about it. It sounds the same. Well, it sounds okay. It's not sounding bad to me. I'm not getting my ear popping. I'm so glad. Do you know about my ear popping?
I don't know. Remind me.
A symptom of my menopause, one of the gifts of menopause, has left me with, if I'm using headphones, there are certain pitches, and it is actually usually female voices, but there are certain pitches of voice that make my left ear pop like I'm on an airplane.
Wow.
And every 2 or 3 seconds, my ears pop.
Oh God.
And I'm so glad you're not one of those. It would have been absolute torture. So there are some people, if that happens, I have to take my headphone out and only just have one headphone listening because otherwise my ear is just. There was actually one episode where it happened all the way through.
Gosh.
Don't keep this bin, but it was the last one. It was the one that's out today. It
Right.
was either, I don't know if it was Artie or Sue's, but one of them, their voice had my ear just going. Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, I bet. Bloody hell. That's it. We'll have to do a voice check before we invite
Yeah.
people on.
And everyone thinks menopause is just hot flashes and,
Yeah.
and being a bit daft. But what was I saying?
Well, I think we've kind of talked about Ofsted, haven't we? Should we go on to?
Yeah, yeah, let's talk about. So you mentioned, I know that you said something there, Jackie, about Ofsted that leads on to our next bit and the idea of maybe we should have an Ofsted inspector
Yeah, I think that's a really
as a
interesting.
guest.
Yeah, there's a.
So it made me think of what other things do you think we should have in or you like to us having? I know we've got some idea of some guests, but actually, what topics, what do we want to cover? What interests you?
Yeah, do you know what? I agree with you. I think it would be great to. I'd love to chat to somebody from Ofsted. I'd also
Mm.
love to chat to somebody from Estin. I'd be really
Mm,
interested to know, through the lens of kind of belonging and inclusion, where those models maybe sit. Are they different? Are they aligned? Are
yeah,
they,
yeah,
how does that come about? I always think that that would be quite interesting. I think I'm really curious about. We've spoken to some really wonderful leaders, and there are some other leaders that I know we're going to chat to in season two.
yes,
I also want to have a think about. I'm always quite keen when I deliver training that we have a real kind of representation of an entire workforce.
yes,
That I
yes.
also want to chat to the teaching staff, the support staff,
The
the maintenance
practitioners
team.
on the ground, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as much as I said I dislike the edit, and the more people in an episode, the worse an edit becomes. I think it would be really great if some of our episodes in season two maybe had a couple more people within them, so we get that kind of difference of experience
Mm,
within the same episode.
mm,
And maybe
mm.
we do have an active head teacher. Maybe we do have classroom support staff and middle
Yes,
leaders, to have a
yes.
real think about where this lives and breathes with feet on the
Mm,
ground.
mm.
What about you?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And even further than that, I'm very mindful that a lot of the people who we've talked to who are active in schools are active in specialist schools. So
Yeah.
actually, some hearing from having more guests who are living and existing and thriving, hopefully, in the mainstream sector would be very interesting. I'd also think about a parent of
Mm.
a child who is
Yeah.
struggling to belong.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Again, both in mainstream and in specialist,
Yes, yeah,
and the navigation of those systems on this sort of,
absolutely.
path to belonging, hopefully.
Mm,
I think that would be
mm.
really interesting. I also think, is there anybody from season one? I mean, we could chat to all of them again for hours and hours and days, but I would really love to have another conversation with Meg.
Yeah.
Lovely Meg, the psychotherapist. I think there's so much we can learn through a really kind of therapeutically influenced lens.
Mm.
Yeah, she was just wonderful. I think I said at the end of the episode, I probably edited it out, that she really set my brain off. It had me
I remember you
thinking
saying it,
and
yeah.
writing and emailing and texting and talking for days and days and days.
Yes, yeah.
And that was great.
And and full disclosure, she won't mind me saying this. I've known Meg for 30 years. We did our PGCE together. It was a
Mm.
bit that didn't make the cut, but talking about that. And when I asked her to be on the podcast, she genuinely was baffled about why would you want to speak? What have I got? She just didn't. And I
Gosh.
wish you could work out how brilliant you were. I really
Yeah.
wish, I am one of her biggest cheerleaders. She's absolutely wonderful.
Well, I'm right there with you with the pom poms on
Mm.
there. But I think we're sort of getting ready to start recording season two, aren't we? We're sort of
Yeah.
getting some dates in the diary. When we think that season two will be out, maybe we should leave it a cliffhanger, like they do in movie
Yeah.
trailers, coming soon. But we're hopeful it'll probably be towards the second half of this year, won't it?
Yeah. Yeah. In the new term, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be good. And what's sort of next for you, Jack? What are you going to do in between the time where we actually press pause on here and there's no more editing to be done for the holidays? What are your next plans to do outside of this podcast?
Yeah, do you know, I'm certainly, I think like lots of us in education, I'm absolutely ready for the end of term.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a long one. The weather definitely hasn't helped. As lovely as it is seeing the sunshine,
Yeah.
the sheer heat. I was teaching for 3 days in a venue with no windows, no aircon, no draft,
We're
and
in a
that was a
dungeon.
rough. It honestly felt like it. Definitely ready for the end of term, but there's lots happening. I mean, so for those that maybe don't know, I've launched an online community, aptly named A Culture of Curiosity, because that's what we're hoping will be created within this community. Mo, I know that you're in there with us.
Mm.
And what I'm hoping is that it becomes this place, this kind of really safe, wonderful space where we can come together. We can ask for help. We can ask the questions. We can share ideas. We can share best practice. We can pick each other up when we're, ready to weep in the art cupboard, which I have done many
Mm.
times. So that's really exciting. We're doing lots of work. We're kind of getting everybody in and settled, and we've just agreed a sort of webinar schedule. Oh, that's another thing I need to
Mm.
talk to you about, Mo.
Mine's
We've
ready to
agreed on,
go. I've
yeah,
actually
well,
already got it done.
you're on the schedule. I just need to get a date from you.
Mm.
But we've got a schedule of really great webinars, lots of support. We're working on some new support methods for those early into their career and those
Mm.
maybe leading in their career. So yeah, there's lots going on with that. And what else am
Brilliant.
I doing? Oh gosh, I'm going back to school. I forgot about that big
Oh,
one.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm doing a master's degree. I start my master's degree in September,
Mm.
and it's full time. Where I'm going to find the time, I've not quite figured out yet. It's a brand new degree, so I'm doing a degree at University College London, and it's brand new, and it's been written by UCL and the Anna Freud
Mm.
Centre.
Mm.
So it is a master's degree in psychology and trauma, and I've opted for the children and adolescents pathway.
Yeah.
And specifically, one of my research modules is about trauma responsive experiences within education provision. So I'm really
Oh, that's
excited.
so you. That's so up your street, Jack.
Yeah, it's very, very me. I'm also excited for student discount again, silver linings and all that. But yeah, I'm really
But it's
excited. I'm
only going to be
looking.
gluten-free pizza boxes that you're strewn around the floor now.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. It's a distance learning degree, so a lot of it
Mm.
is sort of available online, and the sort of
Mm.
lectures and the seminars that are ran virtually a couple of times through the day. So depending on
Right.
where I am at, or what I'm working, I can sort
Yeah.
of juggle it a little bit. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that'll keep me busy for the next year.
That sounds fantastic. That sounds
How about you, Mo?
fantastic. I'm doing a lot of writing at the moment. I've suddenly got into the idea of courses and delivering courses and long-term ones, not just the odd training thing. So
Mm,
I'm writing a CPD program that I'm hoping to pitch to some trusts called Leading with Impact,
okay.
because I'm not going to hopefully upset too many people with this. The MPQ suite of qualifications that exists for middle and senior leaders is wonderful, and it's a breakthrough. And I did my MPQH so long ago. It was before any of it became a suite. It was just the MPQ that H that was available. But I wonder how much of that is actually specifically targeted for people's realities on the ground. I think, have they become too all one size fits all? I don't know. But anyway, what I find is a lot of people that I talk to in leadership is about succession planning. And it's actually about, they'll say, well, the people who are on my senior leadership team now, we're all sort of coming to in office and coming to, we're all going to come to the end of our careers at almost the same time.
Yeah,
Whereas it's almost like this school where there's this next tranche. And so the Leading with Impact program is going to be coaching and CPD and some face-to-face stuff, or maybe online as well. Not necessarily for those people that are already senior leaders, but for those people where you can see the green shoots of leadership are starting.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
actually about that group coaching, that group dynamic, that little cohort that can actually start to learn those skills together.
Yeah, I think that sounds incredible. I think you're
Mm.
right. There is a generational thing, isn't there, where we do see
Mm.
lots of, very established, wonderful leaders that
Yeah,
are probably likely to exit the
yeah,
sector at the same
yeah.
time. But giving people that pathway and support and
Yes.
nurture,
Yes.
because
And
it
it's
can be a
not
really big
saying
jump.
it's a year's program. So it
Mm.
isn't, I've tried to make it not, as onerous as, and it's coaching based and it's reflection based and it's this,
Yeah.
it's that and the other. It's not write a load and more of essays and write a load of this and I found it very difficult to do my coaching qualification whilst I was a head teacher because it was like going back to university and doing all these
Yeah.
really theoretical research projects that I just simply didn't have the capacity to do. So I really struggled with it. So I don't want it
Mm.
to be something like that. I want it just to be based in the lived experience that you have on the ground in your school and
Yeah.
how are you actually going to apply your learning on the ground and
Mm.
then reflect on the impact of doing those things. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. And I'm also trying to do some stuff with around recruitment, around equalities and anti-racist approaches to
Mm.
recruitment and fully recognizing the reality of if I want my leadership to be if I want my school cohort, not just leadership, to be representative of the pupils that we serve, am I really doing all I can to make that happen? Or am I just saying I want inclusive practice, but actually I haven't got the first clue about what I am doing to either encourage or discourage real diverse applications? That's an area that I'm sort of toying with what I can do around that as well.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? You know, I think we're at a tricky point in the world, aren't we, where there are lots of conversations, lots of very loud negative conversations around equality, diversity, and inclusion. And this
Mm,
idea, this nonsense idea that efforts around EDI are about giving people jobs so we've got active representation, and that
yeah.
that means people get the jobs when they should, and all this waffle of crap.
Yes.
But we've got to be able to have the conversation, don't we, of what
Mm,
are the barriers that, whether inadvertently or not, we have created that
yeah.
means that there are obstacles in the way for wonderful people. And that's just not good enough to say, oh,
No.
I don't know.
No. No, it's really simple things like the fact that application forms presume that everybody's qualifications are based on the British education system.
Yeah.
And anyone whose qualifications aren't based on the British education system, it's a safeguarding matter. How is that?
Mm.
Because that's a gap and that doesn't make sense. So it goes into the category of safeguarding.
Yeah. So instantly there are kind of flags attributed
Yes.
for nonsense reasons.
Yes. So I don't want to go into it now because I suspect that's probably a whole other podcast, but that's really something that I'm working with as well now. And I'm working
Yeah.
with a couple of schools who are very willing, ready, willing, and able to actually reflect honestly with me on that. So
Yeah.
I'm probably in season 2 going to have some stuff that comes out of that.
Yeah. Stunning. Definitely a podcast episode there.
There is also then the question of what about our listener? What if they've got ideas for what we want to hear? And because actually we've had both of us, and we've said it during this record, had people come to us and talk about the podcast and say they're enjoying it. But in real time, and maybe because, first season we were expecting three men and a dog to be the ones listening to us. And it's probably your dog, Jack.
Yeah. Hey, I've got three. That would have boosted
And
us up to six.
but we never really thought about this though, and I think it's time now to actually open the doors and
Yeah.
let people know how they can talk to us and how they can contact us during season 2.
Yeah, we are. We're joining the 12th century, aren't we, Mo?
We have, and dun dun dun.
Your level of excitement is how I feel about gluten-free meal deals. We've seen it in the live.
So, if listener, you do want to comment on either anything that we did in season 1, ideas for season 2, if you're interested in coming on and chatting with us, our email address is this: curiouspodchat@gmail.
Yeah, and we'll get that.
Curiouspodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get that put into the bio, I think, so that
Yeah,
people can see that. And we really
yeah,
do want to hear from people because I think that season 2 is going to be it has enough now for us to think, let's make it more interactive. Let's make it a two-way conversation.
yeah, definitely. And I think what we're excited about is we've covered some really great themes and topics in this podcast. But in
Mm,
season two, I think we've got so many guests that have got such wonderful experiences to share with
yes,
us that range will just get bigger and bigger. And so we're
absolutely.
really excited to speak to tons and tons of different people. So by all means, drop us a line, let us know. And yeah, I guess now we kind of work on season two.
Yes, it's time to sign off. Thank you so much to everybody who has listened, who has given us so many positive comments, and most importantly to our wonderful guests this season who took a chance on talking to a couple of bonkers, people who were going to say, basically said, "Come on, just have a bit of a chat, and we don't really know what we're doing, but we really want you to be part of it." So thank you to everyone who was a guest on season one, and we will be in touch with you to come back again, no doubt.
And I've got to say, Mo, thank you for thank you for coming into my life, but thank you for boarding this kind of bonkers idea that we chatted over coffee in a weird hotel in Stockport.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think
Other
we've made
hotels are
something
available
really
in Stockport. You
lovely.
keep saying, hang on, you keep saying weird hotel in Stockport. It gives us visions of this. Yeah,
It was a pretty weird hotel.
it was a pretty weird.
We won't name and shame it, but it
No.
was pretty odd. Pretty odd. For those of us that think, that our careers are glamorous, and that weird hotel is evidence of the contrary. Well, that's it. I guess we say bye and see you in
Yes.
season two.
See you in season two, everyone. Bye bye.